So I need to replace the steering gear on this 2013 Malibu. I've already put on the engine support. This is just one I picked up from Harbor Freight, and made a connection down. I don't know if you can actually see it, but I removed one of the transmission mount bolts and hooked up the chain to that. On the other side, there's a bolt on the side of that front cam, I think it's the camshaft cover, and mounted the chain to that just to do a support the engine, because part of the process is to lower the engine cradle. And ahead of that, we got to remove the tie rod from the steering knuckle. Also got to remove the stabilizer shaft that goes from the strut to the stabilizer shaft. And then I'll continue raising the vehicle up, and will support and lower that rear engine cradle. Also ahead of that, I removed the steering wheel intermediate shaft column that goes to the steering gear. It's just one small 11mm bolt, and just separate the shaft from, I don't know if I can get that in there and show, but it removes the shaft from the gear. Let's see if I can't get you in here and take a look at it. So it's kind of hard to see, but that is the like a universal joint. There's I believe it's just that 11mm bolt. You just take that out and you just pop that off the end of the electric steering gear connection. And that's pretty much the only thing I had to do prior to raising it up and getting it on the point where we can start taking apart the components here. So next I'm just going to get these disconnected and see if we can't get that steering gear out. So I believe this is 18mm here and 18mm on this one. So if your ball joint is kind of wore out, this will actually spin. So there is a it's like an Allen head type of a bolt. You can put on a box end wrench on the 18 and then hold this either with a pair of adjustable pliers, crescent wrench, and then you can spin that off. But these are brand new and they should hold pretty tight, so I should just be able to loosen this up and break that free. So I just put these on. This vehicle was in an accident. This front wheel was shoved up into the rear fender well here, bent the tie rod end, broke the stabilizer shaft. So I ended up replacing both of those, and while I was at it I just did both sides. The problem I ended up having is I couldn't get the toe-in angle proper because there wasn't enough adjustment. I think that during the impact it may have done something to the steering gears, because I don't have enough adjustment. These things are adjusted all the way in, and I still had toe in, and my steering wheel was not straight when it was centered. So I'm going to pull it out. I'm going to take a look at it and see if maybe it can be rebuilt. If not, I'll just go to a salvage yard and I replaced that. Oh, I also had to replace this lower control arm. This thing was all bent back up in here. It was pretty much a mess. But I totaled the car. I bought it back from insurance for, I don't remember what it was, $600. And I put about $400 in the parts. And it'll be a working vehicle. It's not really that big of a problem. So you put this on kind of backwards there, and it protects the threads, and you make it so it's flush with the bottom of this, so you don't mushroom it too bad, and then you're just hitting against that flat of the bolt or nut, and that comes right off. And remove these tie rods. Now I know when I took these off, I counted the turns. These were at 20 turns on both of them, and the jam nut, you know, was about a half to a 3/4 inch off the extent of that. And like I said, I've had these adjusted all the way in, and I still couldn't get the toe in right. So that's why I'm now pulling the steering gear. So on the stabilizer shaft, actually I don't remember what exactly they call it. This is your stabilizer bar. I don't know if this is the one that ties to the strut. It's actually called the stabilizer shaft link. That has a, what is it, a T40. If you look, I don't know if you can see on this one up here, just out of view. So it's got a T40 that you can hold here. Same way, box end wrench, you can crank that without it spinning. This one you definitely have to. It's going to be kind of hard to see on the back, but on the back of that shaft. Use it, you want to make sure that this is like you're tightening it, because you are going to be loosening the nut. So just make sure you got that the right way when you're doing this. So just put the ratchet on that. I'll see if I can't move you, get a better view of it or not. Too. So, it looks like I might have to remove that top one to get this link out. We'll see what happens here. See, that's turning too. So there is pressure on the stabilizer shaft, so that's why it's trying to spring it up. Probably see, but now that we take that pressure off, and this easily comes out. So these, you'll see when they're good. These are brand new. they won't flop around. They'll kind of hold their position. And these are not serviceable, so it's just a replacement part. This is a Delco. I don't remember what the part number was, but and it doesn't. I don't think there's any rhyme or reason what way it goes. Essentially, when you put it back, it's just kind of push it down and pop it in to put your bolts back on, or nuts back on the bolts. I'm actually going to put this top one back on. Put this back on here so I don't lose it. Okay, I think the next thing we need to work on is the lower control arm steering knuckle. Let's see if I can't get you down here. That is this guy right here. And I believe there's like a groove in there if I remember correctly. Let's see what size he is. And of course he's smaller. Might be a 15, let's see. Yep, that's exactly what he is. See on that pin, it's got a groove. So when that bolt is in there, the bolt shoulder just kind of sets on that groove in that hole there, and it's held in with that. Well, we got that all disconnected. So this control arm, because it's connected to this underbody carriage, that's why we're separating that from the strut, because the strut is going to stay with the vehicle, because it's bolted to the top of that fender well. So we're disconnecting everything from this engine cradle, so that we can lower the back of it to get this steering gear out in that space. we'll just kind of drop it into the back underneath here. Just putting this bolt back into the hole where it came out. So I don't lose it and I know right where it goes. Alright. I still have to do the other side. I'll do that and I'll be right back. So the next thing we need to do is remove this steering gear heat shield. Looks like it's just two, probably 10 millimeters. Yeah, those are both 10. Not very long. Must be extra fine for that. Gotta hit this. Bolts back. Alright, now we gotta find the electrical connectors. Let's get you over here, see if you can't see this too. Right there. Looks like there's maybe two connectors up there. I don't know if I'm going to get you anywhere to see that, but I'm going to disconnect them real quick. I'll just research it real quick and figure out how to get that off. So I just looked up some of the service data. It says the order of operation is to disconnect the electrical connections off of the steering gear motor. Right now I don't really have enough room to get up in there and do that. It then says to remove the wiring harness and wiring harness bracket. Remove the transmission through bolts, which we've got one is right here and the other one is at the front here. There's about there. So those two through bolts will allow the weight of the motor to kind of set on the engine stabilizing bar that I put up before I put it up on the hoist. I think what I'm going to do, because then it says after you remove the transmission bolts, the front and the rear, use this stand, this jack stand here. I've got it up on the engine cradle and I got a little bit of tension on it. It says after I do that to remove the exhaust pipe from the front. And then remove the stabilizer bar. And it says do not let it lower more than 2 inches. But I'm thinking there's enough flexibility in the system that I can leave the exhaust on. I can remove the cradle bolts. Actually, it's right here, and the other one's over here. And I'll probably take these exhaust holder bracket off and just kind of let the exhaust settle a bit, and then lower this rear control, or this rear cradle. I've got about a little over an inch above the exhaust here. That'll probably give me enough room. I can get my hands up in between the body of the car to get up there and disconnect those connectors, remove the wiring harness bracket, get it out of the way. So I'm going to try that instead of going through removing all of that. I mean the bolts are seriously rusted on the exhaust. I don't want to disconnect that if I don't have to. So I'm just going to try to remove some of these other bolts and see if I can't slowly lower the cradle and see what I can do with that. So those are 15 millimeter. So I've learned the hard way not to use an impact wrench, especially when you got captured nuts up above. If you can break them loose and then use your impact, it's a lot better to do it that way. So that transmission through bolt is an 18 millimeter. Obviously this whole process I've got a little easier because I do have a hoist now. I bought this in last November. It took them almost 6 months to get it delivered to me. I had concrete poured in my pole barn and installed that just because it's so much more convenient when I had the space. I'm going to put this underneath the engine and kind of support that while I'm taking out the transmission bolts, because if that does want to drop, I can at least slowly take it off and make sure that that is holding up top instead of letting it drop. So, what I'll do is just put a little pressure on the transmission here. Again, you can do the same thing with a jack. So I can see that by putting this pressure on here that the whole thing is moving a bit in reference to the cradle. So I know I've taken some pressure off. Don't know if I'm going to get this out. I'm going to try to center this more underneath the transmission and engine. Let's give her a shot, see what happens. Came completely out. Pretty easy. Let's see if I can get this guy out. So the battery died, so I have no idea what was last, but I'm going to remove the rear engine cradle bolts. Actually, I'm going to get out the steering gear bolts while I'm here too. That might be a little easier to do under here. These are 18 mil. God bless them. Need a bigger. I bet this got a nut on the top that's turning. It's not turning, luckily. Now it is. Alright, at least it's kind of loose. Do the same thing with this guy. Alright, there's nuts on the top that are turning. This guy is going to be a little bit bigger. Yeah, that's it. That's 21 millimeter. Wasn't too bad. Looks like the jack is oh yeah, it's coming down. I'm surprised. Doesn't feel like there's a lot of weight on it, but it's definitely dropping. So, looks like as I take the pressure off of this cradle, there's really not much pressure on it. Here, that's got a captured nut up above that. So when I rotate this bolt, you can hear that captured nut up inside there. So if you were to hit that with a very strong impact wrench, that impact and that percussion from it can actually break the little welds in there, and then that captured nut spins, and then your only solution is to cut the bolt, and you have to somehow re-weld that nut in there to make that connection again. The reason I know that is because on my pickup truck I was using impact wrenches to take my bed bolts off, and they're captured nuts, and I spun like 3 out of the 8 bolts. So I had to cut the cross members open, re-weld the nuts on inside, and then re-weld all of the cross members back together. So it was a lot of extra work just because I didn't, use a ratchet and slowly take them out. That's interesting there too. Look at that, I got a bunch of probably rust and water must have been pooling up in that carriage there. I'm gonna hit this with some air real quick. Yeah, maybe. So that thing is completely free of the body of the car now. But it says don't let it move more than 2 inches. So I'm looking right here between the body and the end of this cradle. As long as I don't move that more than 2 inches away, I think we should be okay. Alright, that's like all of it. Well, it might be resting on these. No, it's not. It's loose. I'm not even sure what's still supporting that. It's kind of like hanging on its own. Well, I can see right now the transmission is not maybe an inch away. I'm fairly certain I'm no more than 2 inches away. I think what I'll do is I'll just measure that and set the jack, and then I know I'm safe. It's just about 2 inches. That's 2 inches of drop, body drop from the back of that to the top of that bushing. So get these out of the way. Got a lot more room to get up there. So I guess the next thing I'm going to do is take the sway bar off. Get that out of the way, and then we can get that steering gear out. So there's two 13 millimeters that are holding the stabilizer shaft. It looks like this back one is split. Let's see if I can't get you up in there and get you looking at it. You can just see that that's got a split there. So it looks like if we take the front one off, that will just slide forward and come out, and we just use that as an alignment pin, I guess, when we're putting it back. These are not very tight. If I can get you over here, I want to just see what I'm doing up here. But the other end of this stabilizer. Right in there, so that's what I'm working on. Put you back over here though. There's not a lot to see or exciting, but gotta get this stabilizer out of the way. Yeah, that come right loose. Let's see, we can't work on this other side. Use my air wrench, but I know there's not enough room to get it in there above that stabilizer bar in the body of the car. So I'm actually using this ratcheting wrenches with a swivel head. Awesome for stuff like this. You got a little bit of a weird angle, and you can still not go a eighth of a turn every time with a regular wrench. Got to be getting close. Loose. So, by not having this exhaust off, I'm going to have to fish it out the side. Let's see how this goes. Take those other two bolts all the way out. Just to make sure they're all the way. I don't know if this really needs to come all the way out, but it's not in the way of anything that I can see. But if it really has to come out, it can come out when the steering gear comes out. Just allowing it to give me some room to get up to get these electrical connections off maybe in this bracket. Move you over here and get a look at what I'm looking at here. So it looks or feels like it's separated from the inside. Let's say it is. It looks like there's a harness. Get out of the access to the electrical connection here. I do not know how those connectors disconnect. Some kind of lock. They certainly don't make it easy. Very frustrating not knowing how in the heck to get that thing off. Alright, time for some research. So I did a little research, and apparently there's a little tab on the bottom of these electrical connectors. I'm not sure how you're doing it, but I got a little pick. I want to see if I can't get up in there. And there's something you got to depress. I'm just gonna fight with this and then come back after I figure it out and show you. So, figured out how to get the large one off. On the back of this, I use this hook and it just looks like on the inside there's a, you can just make out the purple part of the connector, but right above that right there, kind of slides a little bit. So I pulled from the back and pushed that towards the back, and in doing that it loosened that connector and popped right off. So that's got two large connections on it, and those are obviously the main power that powers that motor. It's probably a high current draw, so those are two of the larger motors. The other ones I'm assuming are like position sensors and such. So I believe all of them have a similar connection, so I'm gonna see if I can't find it, disconnect it, and then show you what I found on it. So I got a second of the 3 electrical connections loosened on that, but I think I'm gonna cut bait and just loosen up the bolts. So on this top one I just have a 18 mil wrench on the top of that nut. I'm just going to take out these steering gear bolts. And I would say that after getting this far, I wouldn't have taken off the lower control arm because there's really no need. This thing separates enough so far that I don't think I would even need to take that out. So there, we got that one out. Here's the first of the 2 steering gear bolts. Goes all the way up. side. I think there's a washer on the top of this too. Yeah, there is. On the top there's a washer. And it looks like it's got radial marks on the bottom. So that has to face down. Let's see if it's got the same one. And it does. I don't know if you can see that, but there's little radial marks on that washer. There we go. So that steering gear should which way is the easiest way to get this thing out. Well, you know what? I forgot. Looks like it has to go out towards the passenger side because the top of that top of the electric motor, you can see that right at the very top up here. That's where it connects. And it has to get by the body, so it has to go out the passenger side by the looks of it. And I need to take off that bracket though. Might be 10 millimeter, and they are. I'm working on those two bolts right there in the center. That's the bracket that holds the electrical connectors onto the steering gear. Those apparently need to be disconnected too. So we'll just try to I think there's two. Yeah, looks like there's just those two that hold the connections. I don't think I have any choice but to get that damn connector off. This is probably one of the most frustrating things I've ever taken off together. Oh, I think I'm going to take these exhaust hanger bolts out. Maybe that's holding it up. Gives a lot more room. was not easy. Sway bars out. I have to get that electrical connection off. That's the only way this thing is coming out. It's gonna be a fight to the end, I guess. What a pain. So I finally got that other plug out. It's a similar plug where you hook the bottom of it and you kind of just give it a tug and it releases and comes straight out. So both the large one and the small one that are on this bracket that mounts to it, there's a third plug that goes from part of the steering gear to the other side to the motor. Apparently that didn't need to come off. So I just put that one back on. So there's only two that really have to come off. So now I'm going to try to get this thing out. Move this bracket out of the way. And see if we can't get it out here through the passenger side. There we go. What a pain. I've been out here at this for probably a few hours, going through the whole process to get this out. So I guess I can bring you back when I finally put this back together, but for now it's out.